New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And good morning, dear ones. I'm Rec BRZ.
I'm Rec BRZ.
And we're a couple of ministers talking shit. And it's Friday, January. My banner did not change there. My apologies, folks. What did we decide to call this today, Z?
Oh, the future.
The future. That's right. We've been sitting here contemplating the future all morning, folks, for quite a while here. So let's get started as we normally do. Say thank you to New Thought Media Network for being with us, for sponsoring this program and keeping us on the air. And what we do on Friday mornings is we get together here and we look at what's going on in the world, and oftentimes it takes us to places we don't. Leads to some pretty deep conversations. And we're looking at a lot of things today. COVID's on the rise. President Biden is doing interviews. President-elect Biden is doing interviews. President Trump is putting out 45-minute rambling videos on how I'm not even going to talk about that. What we want to start, because I'll get upset. But what we want to talk, at least jump into a little bit here today, we've been having a pretty deep discussion around the future of professional sports, and specifically the industry that has grown up around sports. And Z, in our discussion, I didn't get a chance to throw this at you before we went on air, but it really seems to me like in a lot of ways, professional sports have become too big to fail. And we heard that phrase with banks, right? We've used that term to describe banks and our banking industry in America. And I would have, admit, and the truth is, folks, that didn't play out, right? We don't have, there are banks that we don't have around on the planet anymore. That banking itself might be too big to fail, but individuals weren't. Is sports too big to fail?
Well, obviously, we're gonna get a divided house here, because there's so many things that are good about sports, and there's so many things that are not. If you look at it from a holistic point of view, but I don't think it's too big to fail. It's too much money. I mean, if you just take the NFL you just take the four big ones: the NFL, the NBA, the PGA, and Major League Soccer. Oh, I'm sorry, and Major League Baseball, right? I don't even want to guess how many people are employed by that model, at various levels, from people who service the fields to people who serve the foods, all the way up to the executives. And so I think, the model of sports and how it's used and what it provides to society has to be evaluated, just like we are evaluating society itself now, as a result of the last 4 years of leadership under the current president, and the implications of how the COVID-19 has caused us to rethink and relook at everything across the board. I heard something yesterday that I forget which studio it is, but starting next year, that movie studio, whichever, I don't know if it's Universal or which one, but they're going to start releasing movies via HBO Max at the same time they go to theaters. If we're back in theaters, if that, if the COVID has created an opportunity for that to happen. So all that to say, I think in the future, all of these systems, I mean, you go from sports, you go to education. Right now, I know in Florida where my grandkids are, they were trying to the governor was trying to force people back to send their kids to school, saying you had to. Well, then the COVID kicked back up again, and now they're having to rethink that idea, uh,
Right.
because it's a lot of moving parts that has to be looked at. So the future is going to be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, the future the future is out there, folks.
Yes.
The future is out there. And in the film industry, you're talking about Warner Brothers. Actually, was
Okay.
right. Warner Brothers, major studio, lots of releases every year. Always been a fairly big player in the industry, and in that regard, I champion that. I applaud that decision to say we can't just keep trying to go back to the way it was. And um, the things I hear, right? It could be the summer of 2022, folks, before we're packing 70,000 people into a stadium for a football game, or packing 70,000 people into a stadium for a rock concert.
Mm-hmm.
And these industries, interesting. It seems to me rock and roll must have done they, for all the grief rock and rollers get. This just all came to me. For all the grief that rock and rollers get, they must be doing something right, because in the big side of music industry, nobody seems to be hurting to get back to work. Now, independent musicians, small musicians, I get it. There's a lot of people that hadn't made the quote rock star status that are hurting and are in and but a lot of bands, they must have had somebody telling them what to do. They must have been putting their money away, right? Because we don't see this huge rush to try to be in front of people and maintain all the layers of the industry. And in competitive sports, professional sports, and even college sports, it looked like it just seemed too fast for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, okay, I get it. There's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of people involved in education, and a lot of people. We did find a way to let a lot of people take the year off in that industry.
Yeah, and I think what this is highlighting for me is the idea that all of the current systems that we have are no longer viable models, because every industry has been affected, whether it's business, whether it's education, whether it's politics, whether it's your family structure, whether it's your sports team. Everything has been affected and had to make adjustments. I mean, and I want to, in a lot of ways, applaud. Not sure what the other end of this is going to look like,
Right.
but I want to applaud the business communities who have now began to get their heads around. We can have, in certain industries, not certain ones you can't, right? But you can have people work remotely and be trusted and still produce a product or a service or whatever it is that they provide, excuse me, and do it well, and do it as good or better than before, which will reduce costs, right? So now we have to figure out where that money goes, or how it affects the whole chain pulley thing. You know, the whole now, Zoom meetings and things like that. People are zoomed out, as they say now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because everything's on Zoom. But at some point, we'll get back to some balance where a lot of meetings will be on Zoom and occasional meetings will be in person. And so I'm saying all that to say, same thing in education, same thing in politics to a certain degree. But what has to happen is we need to rethink the model of the future. We need some Rembrandts, we need some Galileos, we need some Copernicus, we need some Newtons in all of these fields to look outside the box to figure out how we're going to do the movies and the concerts and the sports teams.
Yeah. I, as you said that, what jumps in my head is, has America lost its sense of shared vision? And in religious science, science of mind, right, we're always talking about the global perspective, the global view, getting to the, has there ever even been a vision for global life, for global humanity?
Yeah.
And now you hang out around here in New Thought Media Network, you're going to hear some of that, where we talk about the vision for the planet all the time. And we recognize we're not mainstream, that there's still a lot to do to kind of get this conversation into the mainstream, that folks, America, we don't live in a bubble. The NBA might be living in a bubble. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But wait, they tried that, didn't they? But more and more, what I see coming from this is this pandemic has given us. Now, here's my pitch, folks. Everything that happens in our life is an event, right? You get up in the morning and you kiss your partner. That's an event. What happens after that kiss is an experience. What we make up about that kiss, or what we make up about the way a coworker talked to us, or the guy in line in front of us at the stoplight. So we have an event that leads us to an experience. Now, unfortunately, most people, it seems, stay stuck in the experience. Oh my God, do you know what he did to me? Oh my God, do you know what she said to me? Oh my God, did this, did it, did it. But after, what we forget is, after the experience, there is the opportunity. So every event leads us to an experience, and every experience leads us to an opportunity. The question that we're asking, and I think is being asked of us, is how are we using these opportunities to move consciousness forward, to move humanity's evolution forward, rather than, because it seems to me like a lot of opportunities, people take those and just dig their heels in and say, nope,
yeah,
I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sit here and bitch about the government full time.
And you know, the interesting part about that is, if we look at the world around us, whether it's our community, our city, state, global, cosmos, we know without a doubt that everything works integrally. And if something gets left out, there becomes a little chink in the armor, so to speak. And so now, one thing that COVID has done is allowed us, if we're looking, if we're ready to look, is to begin to say, okay, we cannot have the, I don't know how many millions of people we have now on the fringes that
Right.
are looking for a place to stay, or looking for food to eat, or trying to figure out how to sustain life. We can't have that many people on the fringes, because pretty soon that's going to put a strain on the system, which it is doing right now. I mean, right now we look at, come December 26th, excuse me, anyone that's getting support from the COVID and things like that, that's getting cut off. The whole moratorium on not being able to, not having to pay all of your rent, or getting a extension on your rent and payments, that's about to go away. So now that's going to put either another million or few in this dire situation. So we have to begin to really, really, really look at this model that we're trying to live in and live by, so that we can do better, support people better, and make a better way of living and a better way of communing than we currently have, because it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, we don't plan this show very well. We don't have a great script, and we don't mark everything off to the minute, and because Revsy and I have been having this conversation ongoing for years and years and years in many ways, and the perfection of the universe does not escape me, because Revsy and I have another show that we do together. We do that on Tuesdays. It's called New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. It happens at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays. And in that program, we take an hour each week and we look at a deeper perspective of what is known as the global vision, and a vision for what this really looks like. And there's a lot to it. And we've been exploring that week by week. So I encourage you to go take a look at some of the past episodes. What Z just kind of was touching on is, and what we were talking about last week, is there has to be this consciousness that we are all in this together, and that there is a global and generous and continuous sharing of resources.
Right.
And now more than ever, I think that's absolutely vital. You're right. There are way too many people on the fringes. Now, I have an experience in the past few days that I think is great, because another colleague said to me, hey, I'm doing a coat drive for an organization in Denver that does great work, Urban Peak, and they work with homeless and at-risk teenagers, 15 to 25 is their general target. And they're looking for winter coats. So I put a post out on social media, one of the smaller sites that I belong to, and I'll tell you, I've got about 50 coats sitting in my living room right this minute, and I all from like within a day, 15 different people, 16 different. I've got more coming in all the time. 20 different families within a couple mile radius of my house all said, I'll come up with something. Let's not let these kids go cold this winter. Let's do something to support these kids. So I agree. Way too many people on the fringes. And what we know is we know there is more than enough.
Yes.
We could fill the empty housing in America. We could give every homeless person in America a house and still have plenty of empty houses sitting around in America empty.
And you know, you just gave me a spark in my head when you talked about the teens and everything. In that, when we get on the other side of this, and I'm knowing and trusting it's going to come pretty soon, there will be an enormous opportunity for us to take some of these individuals that are on the fringe, because there's going to be a lot of work to do on infrastructure and food supply and distribution. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we need to rethink and rework. But what a great opportunity for us to take some individuals who for whatever reason weren't able to get a higher education or a skilled a skilled trade or whatever, and take some of these individuals and train them for that. Let's go back to creating some mentorship programs and apprentice programs, and look more closely at trade schools, and not these trade schools that are money factories that get you to sign up and you pay all this money, and at the end of it, you got a piece of paper that's not really recognized and you done spent a lot of money. But some real legitimate programs to get skills, because college is not for everybody. We understand that. And so, but everybody has something to offer. So we skill them up. We get them trained in a specific area to do infrastructure. I mean, that's going to be huge. The whole thing of transportation is going to mass busing and mass, that stuff is going to have to change, because we got COVID-19 now. It may be who knows what 3 years from now, 5 years from now. We don't know.
Right. Right. There is a very good possibility we will see more variations of COVID. From where I'm reading and from the things I'm looking at, it's very real that not only is COVID-19 with us now, period. It's with us. It's going to mutate. It's going to change, and it's going to keep popping up, and we're going to have a whole new industry just in the vaccine side of the world. But I agree with you. Like the program to get people moving again and get people out of the fringes and into, and give them the hand up, not the handout, but the hand up. Although sometimes the handout works. There's a story that I saw a couple months back, featured it on one of our other programs, and now the good news, and I just saw it again yesterday, that Canada did an experiment where they took a population of homeless folk. Now, this started back in 2018. So this was an idea before the pandemic. But the study itself ran 2 years. It was from the fall of 2018 to the fall of 2020. So this has been going on. They have been, and they took a group and they gave a group about $7,500 American, and just gave them cash, no restrictions. Now, each individual did have to prove or had to go through a series of tests, because they didn't want to give this money to seriously mentally ill folk, people that couldn't manage it anyway and needed help. They didn't give it to people that were severe alcoholics and need help. They gave it to people that had, for whatever reason, ended up on the street other than alcoholism or mental health issues. And the vast majority of those people were able to get their life restarted with just $7,500. They were able to get off the street. They were able to find themselves transitional housing. They were able to move up into better housing. They were able to move up into better jobs. And the majority of the study participants are now leading and living, or very close to leading, fully independent and financially solid lives. $7,500 doesn't seem like that much, especially when the government's talking about a $900 billion bailout package. And honestly, folks, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
But
it's and I just thinking, I go back to this thing. When I was in high school, there was a program, there was an opportunity which I took advantage of, to get a trade while I got my high school diploma. So there was a relationship with the local community college that was doing all kind of trade stuff, uh, electrician, plumbing, carpentry. I happened to take commercial cooking and baking. So that when I graduated from high school, and I had my high school diploma and a commercial cooking and baking certificate. A couple of my friends had a barber and beautician license as when they got out, and some had drafting and some civil engineering kind of certificate that were valid and honored,
nice. Nice.
which was a program that was afforded by the local junior college and vocational school. Those kind of programs should come back up now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a friend of mine who was in high school. I don't know if he went through the program or not out there, but they had a landscape and gardening horticulture program that people took advantage, and now has a industry, or has a company that's providing jobs, providing services. I mean, these kinds of things do not cost that much to implement, and they don't take a whole lot of vision to figure out how you can do it. I mean, it takes some, but I mean that can easily be integrated into a program, especially if you do it over 4 years of high school. You carve out some time so that they start in the freshman year. So by the time they finish in their senior year, they have enough hours to do both things. And now they got options. They can go to college, they can continue in their trade, or go to college for that trade. I mean, there's so many options that we have to begin to think about, and not just continue to look to do things as usual.
Right. We're never going back, folks. Right. The new normal isn't even normal, and it isn't, and we're not going. And unfortunately, it does still seem like in certain places we're trying to hold on to that old sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
That in many ways, we just. I guess the question is, where did at some point it would seem, and I guess I'm falling back on a point I made earlier, at some point, America specifically lost sight of a shared vision, and in that we pushed we pushed over into that my personal good versus the collective good. And it all got about, I got to get mine, I got to get mine, I got to get mine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe I'll throw a few bucks at the problem to make me feel good, but that was 1%. I got to get mine, and when I get rich and famous, then I'll go out and help the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know that whole idea that the country was supposedly founded on the melting pot and brotherhood and all these things that were there, because when we think about uh, how this country from what it is now was established. All right, well, we got a whole nother question and answer period about Native Americans and stuff, which is for another show. But if we look at where we are now, and we look at the precepts of what it was, there were people who came from England who were on the margin, who were looking for a better way to represent themselves and live in some kind of communal way with some sense of freedom, uh, and to uplift. But that personal improvement was, again, you can say it was not at the expense of others, but in some ways it was because of Native Americans and slavery. That's a whole nother program. But we're looking at it from the ideal. The ideal was to create a place where people could come, share ideas, figure out how to work together for self-improvement of themselves, but also for everyone. But when it came personal improvement for me and me alone, then the problem. And that's how and that's how the slavery and the Native American issue came about, because people started looking at it as me and mine as opposed to ours.
Right. Yeah. I'm all for personal empowerment, folks, and personal improvement. And that's the business we're in. And I think it has to lead to something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is the big difference. Just figuring these things out so that I can make myself rich or give myself a big huge house. This has to lead to public service. It has to lead to humanity, to service to humanity.
Yeah.
If what we're doing doesn't lead us to being part of this great and glorious idea of a world that works for everyone, you're not going to take it with you. The money's going to stay here, and somebody else is going to fight about it. The government's going to want more. Yeah. I love the government. Let us tax the money you're making. Let us tax the money you're saving, and then we're going to tax the money you got left over at the end. Well, that's another show too.
Yes, yes. And this is great because it shows in the future there are places enough, ideas enough, and things enough that need to be attended to, that everybody can find a place to serve, to give, to help reduce and solve issues that I think are solvable.
Folks, there we are. Because that's the point, really, in so many ways. No matter what you're facing right now, no matter what it looks like in your world, no matter what it looks like in your neighborhood, we're going to get through this. Put on your mask. President-elect Biden has told us he's going to ask everybody to stay masked up for at least the first 100 days of his administration. It may go longer. We may be wearing masks in the U.S. for years as a generalized experience for ourselves, but ultimately we're going to make it through. We are making it through. The darkest days are still ahead of us. They're saying now is the time to be extra cautious, extra safe, and we're going to make it through. The thing we're asking is, what do we want to experience on the other side? Because if we just want to experience more of what got us here, kick back, grab yourself a bag of Doritos or something and veg out on the TV. But if you want something different, Now is the time that we have to start to do the work in consciousness. Now is the time. Things don't just change. We have to do the work in our consciousness first to experience the result next spring, next summer. So yeah, let's build a consciousness that the right and that we're not rushing this vaccine, that the right and proper science is being done to ensure that there is a very effective and safe vaccine. Let's do the work in consciousness that schooling and education and food service and professional sports can still be a part of our lives, but they don't have to be central to our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that together we are creating something new, something magnificent.
Yeah.
We're going to run over today, folks. So there you have it. We've already run over. So
Yes.
Z, thanks for being here this morning. We missed you last week.
Yeah. I was in a future world. Let's leave it at that. And one thing I saw when I was there and came back that I would like to end the day is life is prime. And so as we move to the future, let's figure out how to continue to keep it prime and do what we need to do to sustain it.
Absolutely. All right, folks. We're out of here for today. This is Friday, December 4th. This has been Ministers Talking Shit. We'll be back again next week, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network. And hey, tune back in 45 minutes from now. We've got morning prayers and a great way to move your morning forward and to jump into the weekend. So, Z, thanks for being with me. I'll see you again soon, my brother.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings, everyone.